Imagine this. You roll out of bed one morning, coffee in hand, and instead of birds chirping, you hear the sound of hammers, nail guns, and bulldozers. You rub your eyes, thinking maybe the neighbors are putting in a new deck. But no, this isn't a deck. This isn't even a garage extension. You step outside and find a sprawling neighborhood of nearly 100 houses sitting smack dab on your property. No, this isn't the opening scene of a bad dystopian Netflix show. This is real life. This is Reddit. And this is an HOA horror story so wild it makes Karen find me for my curtains look like preschool drama. Because when an HOA rep decides they can just build 98 homes on land they don't even own, you know the popcorn's coming out. This isn't just an overstep. This is an Olympic-level long jump over the line of legality. This is Monopoly if your shady cousin Larry played banker, stole from the pile, and then built hotels on your Baltic Avenue. Now let's set the scene. The rightful property owner, our unintentional Reddit hero, has owned this land for decades. Clean title, taxes paid, deed solid as a rock. And then, seemingly overnight, the HOA and developer combo go, surprise! We built an entire suburb here. Oh, and by the way, we also plan to tell you how tall your grass can be. Talk about audacity. Talk about arrogance. This is HOA villainy turned up to 11. But here's the twist. The owner's deed never changed hands. Not once. And that, my friends, is where this story starts to taste delicious. Because while the HOA may have built homes worth around $34 million, every last brick is sitting on land that belongs to someone else. Someone who suddenly has the kind of leverage that makes lawyers salivate and HOA presidents sweat through their polo shirts. Now, before we dive into the juicy top 10 facts, let's make something clear. This isn't just a quirky Reddit tale. This story is a masterclass in how homeowners associations, developers, and clueless bureaucrats can create a perfect storm of incompetence. It's a reminder that the paper sitting in your filing cabinet, the deed, the title, the boring legal stuff most of us never read, is more powerful than the flashiest HOA bylaw binder. Because let's be honest, HOAs love their binders. They love their rules. No pink flamingos on the lawn. No leaving the trash can out for more than 3.2 minutes. No fun, period. But what happens when an HOA forgets the one rule that actually matters? Who owns the dirt they're building on? That's when the universe delivers the kind of cosmic justice we all dream about. So today, dear listener, we're breaking this case down in true HOA-WARS fashion, with sass, sarcasm, and a hefty side of, you can't make this stuff up. We're going to explore the top 10 wildest insights from this saga. Because believe me, each one is like a plot twist in a soap opera written by lawyers and fueled by HOA arrogance. Strap in. Grab your coffee or wine, I won't judge. Because this is going to be a ride. Let's kick it off with the fact that starts this whole circus. The deed. See, HOAs like to strut around with clipboards and bylaws, pretending they own the place. But at the end of the day, it's the deed that rules all. The deed is the golden ticket, the cheat code, the you shall not pass staff in the hands of Gandalf. And in this story, the deed never changed hands. Not once. That means that every single one of those 98 houses, worth millions, was built on land that legally never stopped belonging to the original owner. Picture this. The HOA is throwing block parties, passing out welcome baskets, slapping people with fines for painting their mailbox the wrong shade of beige. All while the land beneath their feet isn't even theirs. It's like throwing a wedding in someone else's backyard without asking, and then charging them for the catering bill. Now, here's where it gets funnier. You'd think somewhere along the line, maybe when the developers pulled permits, maybe when they filed zoning requests, maybe when they asked the bank for money, somebody would have said, hey, wait a second. Do we actually own this land? But nope. Apparently, due diligence was too much trouble. The HOA and developers barreled ahead like Wall-E. Coyote sprinting off a cliff, blissfully unaware of the canyon below. And now, the owner holds all the cards. They could, in theory, evict every single homeowner. They could demand payment. They could sell the entire neighborhood at auction. That's the kind of power you only get when your deed is the last piece of paper standing in a storm of incompetence. So remember this, folks. Your HOA may act like royalty, but the deed in your filing cabinet is Excalibur. And when the kingdom forgets who's got the sword, chaos reigns. And if you thought the deed drama was wild, wait until you hear how much this oopsie is worth. Spoiler alert, it's not pocket change. It's the kind of money that makes developers cry into their avocado toast. Now let's talk numbers, because nothing makes a story hit harder than cold, hard cash. These 98 homes? Collectively worth around $34 million. That's right, by building without permission, the HOA and developers basically handed the rightful landowner a $34 million surprise gift. Imagine logging into your bank account one day and finding an extra $34 million in there, courtesy of the HOA who fined you last week for leaving your Christmas lights up until February. Talk about poetic justice. But it's not just about the money, it's about the leverage. In property law, the value of what sits on your land doesn't erase your ownership. So legally, the owner could claim every inch of those 98 homes. The buyers, the banks, the developers, they're all standing on shaky ground, while the true owner holds the high ground like Obi-Wan Kenobi in the final showdown. And the irony? The land itself had been in the owner's family since the mid-90s. Passed down, maintained, quietly sitting there, waiting for its moment in the spotlight. Nobody thought much about it, until suddenly it sprouted a neighborhood. It's like inheriting grandma's dusty old teapot and finding out it's actually solid gold. Now, to be clear, this doesn't mean the landowner can just start charging rent tomorrow. Legal battles like this get messy. Lawyers will swarm, courts will drag their feet, and the HOA will try every trick in the book to claw back control. But the point is, the landowner has something priceless. Proof. The deed, the title, the records. And those, in the eyes of the law, are worth more than any developer's blueprint. So how does this play out? Potentially with settlements, payouts, and lawsuits that stretch on for years. But in the meantime, the sheer fact that one person legally owns the dirt under 98 shiny new homes is the kind of plot twist you couldn't script if you tried. And if you're sitting there thinking, surely the HOA had the authority to do this, oh sweet summer child, wait until you see just how far these power-hungry reps think their reach goes. Because next, we're diving into HOA tyranny on a scale that makes small-town politics look like kindergarten squabbles. HOAs love power. And I don't mean the we keep the grass trimmed kind of power. I'm talking the dictator of a banana republic type of power. The kind where one person suddenly thinks they're running a sovereign nation because they got elected HOA president by 3 neighbors in a cul-de-sac. In this case, the HOA didn't just flex, they went full-on empire building. They acted like their clipboard was the Declaration of Independence and their little bylaws binder was the Constitution. And what did they do with all that imagined authority? They built 98 houses on land they didn't even own. Let's pause for a moment and appreciate the audacity. It's one thing to fine someone $50 for parking on the street overnight. It's another to slap a lien on someone's house because their shutters aren't earth tone enough. But to literally develop nearly 100 homes on somebody else's dirt? That's not just overstepping, that's pole vaulting over the line while blindfolded. Think about it. This HOA essentially declared themselves mayor, developer, zoning commissioner, and real estate tycoon all in one. No elections, no oversight, just pure we said so energy. They turned into a tiny country with suburban houses as their currency. Except here's the problem, countries have borders. And the deed holder here was basically the border patrol saying, excuse me, but you've wandered about 98 houses too far. And let's not forget the people who bought into this. Families moved in, paid mortgages, probably argued with movers about where to put the couch. All without realizing they were living in a neighborhood that was technically squatting. These weren't homeowners. They were, unintentionally, tenants of a guy who had no idea his backyard had turned into a subdivision. So, tyrant or tiny country? Honestly, both. The HOA acted like they had absolute sovereignty, but when you build your castle on sand, or in this case, someone else's deed, the tide of reality comes crashing in hard. Transition hook. And speaking of tides, nothing washes away HOA fantasies faster than the cold, hard facts of government paperwork. Because while the HOA was busy playing SimCity, the tax records were quietly sitting in a dusty filing cabinet, waiting to expose the whole charade. Now, here's where the plot really thickens. Tax records. That boring paperwork most of us dread every April? Turns out, it's the unsung hero of this entire saga. See, while the HOA was out there pretending they owned the land, the county's tax rolls never changed. The property taxes were still tied to the rightful owner. The government never recorded a sale. No transfer. No change in title. Which means, legally speaking, the HOA was building their dream neighborhood on a foundation of nothing. It's like showing up to the DMV with a crayon drawing of a driver's license and saying, "Yep, looks official to me." What makes this so deliciously ironic is that HOAs love to weaponize paperwork. They'll cite bylaw numbers like they're verses in scripture. They'll fine you for not filling out a form in triplicate. But when it comes to the one set of documents that actually matter, deeds, titles, tax records, they suddenly develop amnesia. And you know the best part? Tax records aren't exactly easy to fake. You can Photoshop a flyer, you can fudge a PowerPoint presentation, but you can't walk into the county clerk's office and just add your HOA to a deed like it's a Facebook friend request. The system doesn't work that way. And thank goodness it doesn't, because otherwise this entire neighborhood scam might have flown under the radar. So while the HOA struts around pretending they're in charge, the taxman is basically standing there, arms crossed, saying, "Funny, because my books don't show your name anywhere." Transition hook. But hey, don't feel too bad for the HOA just yet, because the next fact proves that no matter how much they intended to do things the right way, intentions mean absolutely nothing without ink on paper. Let's get one thing straight. In the world of property, intentions don't mean squat. You can intend to mow your lawn. You can intend to fix that leaky faucet. You can intend to pay your HOA dues on time, okay, maybe not that one. But unless you actually do it, intentions are worth less than expired coupons. And yet, here we are. The developers and HOA reps behind this disaster apparently thought that intending to record property changes was good enough. They had grand visions, blueprints, probably even ribbon-cutting ceremonies. But the one thing they didn't have? The actual legally binding paperwork that transfers ownership. Here's a fun analogy. It's like telling a cop, "I intended to stop at that red light." Do you think the ticket disappears because you had good intentions? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Now, developers love to throw around buzzwords like planned community and long-term vision. They'll show glossy renderings of smiling families walking golden retrievers down sun-dappled sidewalks. But no matter how pretty the vision board looks, it's all hot air if you don't have the legal rights to the land. And that's exactly what happened here. They built a legacy on paper-thin assumptions. And when the real paperwork came knocking, it all crumbled like a poorly made sandcastle at high tide. So the next time you hear a developer or HOA bragging about their big plans, remember this story. Because unless there's ink on the deed, those plans are about as real as monopoly money. Transition hook. And if you thought paperwork was boring, wait until you hear about covenants. The magical strings HOAs love to attach to property. Except in this case, the strings weren't tied to anything at all.
Covenant.
The HOA's favorite word. Sounds fancy, right? Like something out of a medieval contract.
Herje, Touchalt Not Paint Türk Hava Yolları Schutterspurple.
In reality, covenants are just the legal glue that binds homeowners to an HOA's rules. When you buy a house in an HOA neighborhood, you're not just buying walls and a roof, you're buying into a covenant. That's why HOAs can tell you what color your mailbox should be, or how many garden gnomes are too many. But here's the catch. For covenants to mean anything, they have to be properly recorded and tied to the land itself. If they're not recorded, they're worthless. About as effective as me writing, "I own the Eiffel Tower" on a napkin. And that's exactly what went wrong here. The HOA might have thought their covenants automatically extended to this property. They may have even drafted some paperwork, patted themselves on the back, and filed it away in a dusty office drawer. But if it wasn't properly recorded with the county, those covenants are nothing more than glorified wish lists. Which means all those homeowners who thought they were moving into a regulated, HOA-protected neighborhood. Surprise! They were actually living in legal limbo, and the rightful owner of the land was under no obligation to recognize any of those HOA rules. It's the ultimate case of HOA overreach, trying to enforce covenants on land they never controlled. And the beauty of it all is that the law doesn't care about their binders full of rules. The law only cares about what's been recorded. And in this case, the record shows the HOA has exactly zero power here. Transition hook. So if you're thinking, surely someone would have stood up to this madness earlier. Oh, just wait. Because the next facts are all about what happens when one brave homeowner doesn't play along with the HOA herd mentality, and why that makes all the difference. Which means all those homeowners who thought they were moving into a regulated, HOA-protected neighborhood.
Surprise.
They were actually living in legal limbo, and the rightful owner of the land was under no obligation to recognize any of those HOA rules. It's the ultimate case of HOA overreach, trying to enforce covenants on land they never controlled. And the beauty of it all is that the law doesn't care about their binders full of rules. The law only cares about what's been recorded. And in this case, the record shows the HOA has exactly zero power here. Transition hook. So if you're thinking, surely someone would have stood up to this madness earlier. Oh, just wait. Because the next facts are all about what happens when one brave homeowner doesn't play along with the HOA herd mentality, and why that makes all the difference. There's an old saying, if everyone else jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? Well, when it comes to HOAs, the answer for most homeowners is apparently yes. Why? Because HOAs thrive on peer pressure. They thrive on conformity. They thrive on making you feel like the odd one out if you dare to say, actually no, I don't want to repaint my house beige for the 7th time. And that's exactly what happened in this saga. The HOA steamrolled through like a bulldozer with no brakes, and most people either didn't notice or didn't fight back. Families signed the paperwork. Buyers moved in. Banks financed mortgages. Everyone just went along with it. Everyone except one person, the rightful landowner. The lone holdout. The stubborn nail sticking out of the floorboard that the HOA just couldn't hammer down. See, this is what makes the story so juicy. If that one owner had folded, if they had been tricked or bullied or bribed into giving up their deed, this entire scheme might have worked. The HOA would have gotten away with it. They'd be sipping margaritas on the porch of their ill-gotten neighborhood right now. But nope. This one person stood their ground. They knew their rights. They knew their deed. And they didn't bend even when everyone else did. And that, my friends, is the real lesson here. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to play along to bring the whole house of cards crashing down. So the next time your HOA tries to tell you what color your shutters have to be, remember this story. Because one voice, backed by the right paperwork, can outshout an entire board of power-hungry clipboard warriors. Transition hook. And if that wasn't enough of a plot twist, wait until you hear about the secret weapon hiding in plain sight, because title insurance might just be the most boring-sounding superhero of all time. Title insurance. The thing your realtor made you buy at closing that you probably forgot existed. You probably thought it was just another way for the bank to squeeze a few extra bucks out of you. But guess what? In a situation like this, title insurance is basically the Batman of boring paperwork. Here's how it works. When you buy a property, title insurance is supposed to guarantee that the title is clean.
No hidden lien.
No surprise claims. No oops. Someone else actually owns your land. It's the safety net that keeps you from waking up to discover your new home sits on top of an old family burial ground, or, in this case, on someone else's deed entirely. Now, imagine being one of the poor souls who bought a house in this unauthorized HOA subdivision. You think you own a slice of the American dream. You've got the white picket fence, the HOA newsletter, the fines for leaving your trash cans out. Life is good. Until suddenly, the rightful owner shows up waving the deed and saying, actually, you're on my property. That's where title insurance steps in. If the paperwork was faulty, and clearly it was, then title insurance companies might be on the hook for millions. Which means the homeowners aren't left completely hanging. But the insurance company suddenly has a financial migraine the size of Texas. And you better believe they're going to turn around and sue the developers, the HOA, the contractors, maybe even the county clerk's office for good measure. It becomes a domino chain of lawsuits, all because nobody double-checked the most basic part of the deal. Who owns the land? So while the HOA thought they were in control, The reality is that title insurance could become the landowner's secret sidekick enforcing a payout. And once the insurance companies get involved, trust me, the HOA is going to wish they stuck to arguing about lawn ornaments. Transition hook. But don't think the HOA board members get to hide behind their fancy polo shirts and committee titles. Because the next fact proves that when you sit on a board, you don't just inherit power, you inherit responsibility. And in this case, responsibility is about to bite back. Let's get real for a second. Being on the HOA board is supposed to mean something. It's not just a chance to feel important at the neighborhood barbecue. It comes with responsibilities, fiduciary duties to be exact. In plain English, that means board members have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the homeowners they represent. They're supposed to protect property values, manage community funds responsibly, and follow the law. Sounds simple, right? Well, apparently not. Because in this case, the board members didn't just drop the ball. They punted it into another dimension. They greenlit a development project on land they didn't own. They ignored the paperwork. They let people move in, take out mortgages, raise families, all under the false assumption that everything was legit. That's not just a mistake. That's negligence on a grand scale. It's like being a ship captain who forgets to check if there's water under the boat. And here's the kicker. Because fiduciary duties are legally binding, those board members could be personally liable. That's right. The people who were so eager to slap fines on you for your lawn gnomes might now be the ones writing checks to cover millions in damages. It's poetic justice, really. The HOA board wanted power, but they forgot that with great power comes great responsibility. And in this case, great lawsuits. Transition hook. Which brings us to the final, delicious twist of this saga. The lesson every homeowner should tattoo on their brain. Always read your deed. Because at the end of the day, the HOA may have binders of rules, but the deed is the nuclear option. Let's face it, most people don't read their property documents. Deeds, covenants, bylaws, they all go into a dusty folder that gets shoved into the back of a filing cabinet. Out of sight, out of mind. Until suddenly, you're living in an HOA-induced nightmare. But here's the truth. The deed is everything. It's the alpha and omega of property ownership. It doesn't matter what the HOA says. It doesn't matter what the realtor promises. It doesn't matter what the glossy brochure shows. If the deed doesn't back it up, it's worthless. And that's the final mic drop of this story. The HOA can build 98 houses, print 98 rulebooks, and issue 98 fines. But without the deed, they've got nothing. Meanwhile, the rightful owner, armed with nothing more than a piece of paper and a stubborn streak, owns every inch of it. So the lesson is simple. Don't ignore your paperwork. Read it. Understand it. Guard it like treasure. Because someday, it might just save you from an HOA nightmare. Or better yet, it might hand you the keys to an entire neighborhood you didn't even know you owned. And with that, let's wrap this saga up with one final thought. The conclusion that ties this whole wild ride together. And there you have it. The saga of the HOA that built 98 homes on land they didn't own, only to discover that the rightful landowner held all the cards. It's a story of arrogance, incompetence, and cosmic justice. A story that proves HOAs aren't invincible, no matter how many fines they issue or how many bylaws they print. A story that shows that one piece of paper, the deed, can topple an entire empire of suburban nonsense. But more than that, it's a cautionary tale. For homeowners, it's a reminder to know your rights, to read your documents, to never let an HOA bully you into submission. For board members, it's a warning. Your fiduciary duties aren't optional. Screw up this badly, and you might find yourself personally on the hook. And for the rest of us, it's entertainment. Sweet, sweet entertainment. Because there's nothing quite as satisfying as watching an HOA get hoisted by its own petard. So the next time your HOA president knocks on your door to complain about your holiday decorations, just smile. Remember this story, and know that no matter how much power they think they have, the deed in your drawer is the real trump card. Alright, HOA warriors, that's the end of this saga. If you love this wild ride, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop your own HOA horror story in the comments. Because trust me, there are plenty more battles to fight, and I'll be here to cover every single one of them. Until next time, stay stubborn, stay sarcastic, and remember, paperwork is power.